right. Erin, can you progress us to the next slide, please? Hello and welcome to Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability and Breaking the Glasses collaborative meeting on an awesome topic about building mentorship all through your career. I think this is going to be a really amazing event for us to collaborate between these two organizations and to learn from some real experts in the field. So welcome all, and thank you for taking time out of your day to be here on virtual screen with us. We really do appreciate it. So my name is Caroline Trowbridge. I am the chair of the events committee at Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, but I am really just here to pass the baton to the people who are real change makers on this topic. I'm going to quickly run through the agenda. We'll have a little bit of Zoom etiquette, and then I will introduce Breaking the Glass, and then we'll have a panelist discussion followed by a question and answer from the audience. And finally, we'll wrap up at the end of the hour. Next slide. So who is Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability? We're a nonprofit originally founded in the San Francisco Bay Area, but we are now in 13 countries and have a membership base of over 500 professionals, both men and women. The goal of the organization is to really enhance and support women through their careers in the green economy. And so we offer events like these. We also have a mentorship program, a in-person event that is a large TED Talk style conference in October, which will be awesome. And we also just generally build networking and job board opportunities for people to expand their careers. Next slide. We really want to highlight on all these events that we have a scholarship opportunity. We feel that it is very important to make our membership accessible to everyone. And so there are still some spots available. So we really want, if you know anyone who would benefit from this scholarship opportunity, please do forward it along. There's still some spots. Next slide. Some upcoming events from Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability. We have a panel in July on how to enhance our grid in order to mitigate the impacts of wildfires, which is something that we really experience here in California. We also have a Los Angeles chapter that will be doing a book club on the book Donut Economics, 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist. I am a very slow reader, so I should probably start reading that soon, but maybe you all are much quicker. And lastly, we have our first in-person event in the San Francisco Bay Area since the pandemic. It will be at Bear Bottle Brewery, which is one of my favorite breweries here in the Bay Area. And we'll just meet and celebrate our reunion. It's something I'm really looking forward to. Next slide. There are also some upcoming events from our co-host, who is also going to speak a little bit more about the organization themselves. I think maybe I'll just pass it right now, Elizabeth, to you so you can explain a little bit more about the organization and these events.
Yeah, absolutely. On the next slide, I'll explain a little bit more what Breaking the Glass is, but we would also love to have you join us for our upcoming events. They are free to the public to join as well. On July 7th, we'll be teaming up with Rad Women to present on leadership at every level. This is going to be a really great conversation to hear from leaders in the tech space about how leadership isn't just for management, but having strong leadership abilities helps you at every level of your role within an organization. And then on July 27th, we'll be teaming up with Women in Cable Technology to have a conversation on male allies in the workplace. Always a really exciting conversation. Come hear how, men have set themselves up to be examples of, mentorship, allyship, the actions that they are taking as well. Feel free to pass along to everyone, and also a great time to ask questions. If you are in a, situation where you're struggling, on getting that mentorship that you need. Also a great time to go in and ask these leaders about how they've navigated those relationships. So I'm also dropping the link so that y'all can register for those events in the chat right now. So we can go to the next slide and I can talk a little bit, or we can get into the Zoom etiquette for this event.
Yeah, so I don't think we have to touch too much on this. We're all pretty much Zoom professionals at this point, whether we like it or not. But mostly what this slide is all about is encouraging you all to put in your whole self to this 1 hour. I know we all have little pings coming all the way in all different directions from the various devices, but the more you are present and listen, the more you will learn. And then also the more you put out in that, putting your name entirely under your photo, sharing your face, putting your LinkedIn in the chat. All of these are ways to enhance your career by building your network and actually communicating with the people in the event. And if that's not something you feel comfortable doing, totally fine, but we definitely encourage that here at WCS. All right, next slide. WCS also has a virtual membership opportunity. You can go to this QR code and learn all about it, or reach out to me. I am happy to speak to you about the benefits of WCS. Next slide. And now, Elizabeth, truly to you, I pass the torch. We are so excited to be collaborating here with Breaking the Glass, to have you and your panelists here. So please, without further ado, take it on.
Thank you, Caroline. And, also thank you to all the volunteers on this call, everyone who's been back and forth with me over Slack, setting up the logistics for this event. I really appreciate the warm welcome to your community as well. I'm also just so excited for this panel of speakers. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. But before we jump into that, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Elizabeth Lamb, the Senior Partnerships Manager for Breaking the Glass. We are an ESG project of specialist staffing group, which specializes in STEM talent. Michelle and Nick are both from that organization within Progressive. They can touch more about that as well. But what Breaking the Glass does specifically is we partner with STEM companies and professional associations to provide personalized programming on diversity inclusion and women's career development topics. We've provided webinars for our partners like IBM, Dell, Salesforce, and Girl Develop It. If you're interested in getting more involved, be sure to sign up for our mailing list. I'll be dropping that in the chat as well. Also, add me on LinkedIn. That's also a great way that we can chat. We're always looking for other speakers and co-hosts. So if you have a topic you're passionate about, we're probably going to cover it soon. So come join us as a speaker. In a few moments, I'll be going off mute and off video until the end so I can be in that chat, blowing it up with resources. But until then, Michelle's going to lead us through this great conversation. We'll have a few of our set questions and then Q&A will get addressed towards the end. So without further ado, Michelle, can you officially get this panel started for us?
Yes, I can. Thank you all for having me today. I'm Michelle DuTemple. I'm an executive consultant at Progressive Global Energy. I specialize in permanent placement within renewable companies. I'm also a horse-guided empowerment coach, which is an alternative coaching that uses horses as a modality to empower people. And I co-lead our women's employee resource group and our Latinx employee resource group because I'm very big in our diversity and inclusion efforts. Passing it on to our panelists. Nick, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Young. I'm Senior Director with Progressive GE, work alongside with Michelle. I focus on our partnerships with the utilities in the Northeast and Midwest. Been in talent solutions for roughly about 17 years, specifically targeting STEM talent. So that's where my passion brings me here today. And have previously served on boards focused around how we're getting more women into the STEM careers, starting as early as elementary grade to elementary school, but then also creating opportunities within the existing workforce and how they can get themselves into STEM occupations. So really excited about the conversation today as it leans towards clean tech and sustainability.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Robinson. I am a manager of configuration management at the Entergy Corporation. I've been in the power utility industry for quite some time. I have a background in electrical engineering, project management, as well as organizational leadership. I spent a lot of time focusing on helping others develop in various areas, transforming their ideas into reality, as well as being the best example I can be for young women and minorities in the STEM fields, as well as the entrepreneurship world.
Hi, everyone. My name is April Reed. I am a reliability engineer at Pepco. I've been in the manufacturing field as an electrical engineer for over 5 years. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, but I currently reside in Maryland. I am a part of two women empowerment groups, the first being Minority Christian Women Entrepreneur Network, that supports women to become impactful and positively influential in their homes. And also, I'm also an administrator in a group known as Women in Armor, which is a community for women in need of fellowship and also developing their spiritual growth and knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, next slide.
All right, I think we actually will take down the slides if we could to our slide producer. Thanks. Michelle, it's all you on the
Okay.
moderating from here.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to kick it off with the first question. What does it look like to be in a mutually beneficial sponsor, mentor, or ally relationship? And Nick, if you could start us off and kind of tell us a little bit about how you set the expectations around these relationships with your team.
Yeah, it's a great question. For me as a leader over a team, and as we're growing the team over time, I think it's important for us to set the tone. And one of the keywords that we've been talking a lot about is psychological safety. How are you creating an environment where everyone feels like their voice is heard? Everyone has an opportunity to share their opinion regardless of background. And so I think from a leadership perspective, it's ensuring that we're having that environment, that I'm curating it to make sure and ensuring that everyone has that voice. But even taking it a step further as far as where it's mutually beneficial is I also create the opportunity to empower those on my team, and regardless of background, giving them that chance to have their voice heard in a group setting. If that means kind of challenging them to get outside of their comfort zone and speaking up in a group, or reminding them of their contributions and how important they are. I think it's important that as a leader, we have to be really intentional around what kind of environment we want to have as a team. And that includes creating opportunities for women and minorities on our team to have their voice heard and challenge them to speak up as well.
Thank you, Nick. Crystal, how about yourself? Like, how have these relationships impacted the success of your career? How are you able to make your sponsor aware of your goals?
Well, I think it's been a positive impact on my career so far, because having a sponsor that can be there for you and provide you with either the right advice or the contacts for others who are able to help push you in the right direction, because it's not always about finding the next job. It's about personal development and growth. So by them, being on the other side or having another perspective, they can connect you with those leaders or individuals who can help you grow in various areas that you may, have a little challenge or need to grow. I would say that having those relationships, creating regular touch points, I would say 6 weeks or every other month or quarterly. It doesn't have to be on a weekly basis, but just something regular to have a check-in. I would say it's also good to be clear on the goals, whether you know how to achieve them, be able to communicate with your sponsor or your mentor to let them know where you want to be so they'll know how to help you. I know when I have mentees, it's better to know where they want to go so I can help them get there. And then also just show a little progress. You want to let your sponsor or your mentor know that it's worth their time to communicate with you and work with you, because time is something that's very valuable. So if you have someone that's willing to put their time and their efforts in you, you want to show them that it's worth it. And then you can do your part by making a good name for yourself or just doing your job well, so that when they're advocating for you and speaking well of you to others, you'll have others to agree and say, hey, yeah, she does do a good job, or she is good at networking and reaching out and collaborating with others.
Fantastic. April, can you share with us an example of how you you acted as an ally or mentor or sponsor to others?
Sure, Michelle. So I have acted as in both positions. I have been mentored, and then I have also mentored someone. In my first job, I was the only female engineer, and you know, being the only female in a field that is dominated by men, it can sometimes get very challenging. And then there's that aspect of where we have to prove ourselves. It's something that has happened to me throughout my career. As a female person to always in the engineering field, when you come in, there's always a doubt about, you know, your skills and your knowledge. And you always have to go that extra mile to try to prove that you are just as worthy, or you do have the same type of knowledge and you are capable of, you know, doing the job. So in my first job, I was able to help another female engineer that came in after me be able to handle those type of situations and, you know how to approach certain tasks and certain assignments that were given, and just to help with mental stability on the whole, because of the pressures that we are faced, one within the workplace, and then as a whole, as the stereotypes with women and things like that. I was just able to mentor her and help her to be able to have a smooth transition into that position so that she didn't feel as stressed as I think I would have felt when I came in as the first female engineer in that department. So I was able to definitely, help with that and just, help her to remain emotionally stable in the position, because it's really an emotional pressure that you feel when you are in that type of environment. Because you have so many eyes looking at you, always, trying to see, okay, is she really sure here? Can she really do this? Just questioning everything about you. So it can be emotionally damaging, but I was able to help with that transition. And then on the other side, I recently switched from manufacturing into the utilities, which is a new field for me. It's still within electrical engineering, but it's just a different aspect. And I was able to have someone as my mentor coming in there, and it was the best thing that I think could have happened to me, because again, I am the only female engineer in that area. And to have that person be there to encourage me, give me honest feedback, show me who are the subject matter experts that I need to go through for certain things, and then just generally give me accountability on the whole. I think that is just a blessing in disguise. And I was really, really able to excel quickly and also learn and perform my job more efficiently, because I was able to have someone there help steer me in the right direction and, help me to not let my emotions, sometimes get involved, and just try to deal with things from a factual point. Because at the end of the day, once you have the facts backing what you're saying, the evidence is there, there's not much to question. So it has, personally developed me to be able to be more thorough when I do things, so that I'm able to limit the amount of scrutiny that comes with just being a female in that position.
Well, I love seeing women support women, and she was very lucky to have you there to take her under your wing. That's something that you didn't experience. So it was a much more lonelier road for you. A question for both you and Crystal. I'll maybe ask Crystal on the mentee side and you more as the mentor, like what, when building a relationship, right, do you look for in a mentor or a mentee?
I would say from a mentee perspective, you try your best to connect with those who are willing to give you their time, because as I stated earlier, especially when you have someone who is in a higher level position like a VP or president or CEO, they don't have a lot of time. And if they're willing to give you that time, then that's someone that you already have on your side, that's genuinely interested in your growth and success. And that will, give you those, either the coaching that you need, the criticism, as well as the encouragement, to go forward in your career.
That was good, Crystal. So from the mentor side, I think as a mentor, once you have someone who is open and willing to accept the advice that you are giving to them, it makes it much easier to be able to work with them, because, you have to have someone there who wants to hear what you have to say, because as Crystal previously said, time is valuable. So if you have someone who's closed off or doesn't really want to take your advice, then that relationship will not be beneficial. So I think having someone who's open, willing to hear what you have to say, willing to have that accountability for themselves, makes it easy to be a mentor to them. So, yeah.
Now, I also wanted to touch on a point that Nick brought on early on, like how do you go about building that psychological safety so that you are, in a trusting environment where you can share and have a voice and truly feel supported?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a challenge to do so, and I think there's experts, and Aaron put Adam Grant in the chat as somebody who talks about organizational psychology. He's actually somebody that I read a couple of his books and has got some great points. So I think a lot of people are trying to answer that question. How do you create psychological safety in the workplace? And I think people look into it because there's not a right answer. There's wrong answers, lots of wrong answers, but there's not an exact right answer. I'll say from my perspective as a leader, the way I want to create psychological safety is I want everyone in the room to have a voice and everyone's voice to be respected. And as it ties into specifically this group, clean tech and sustainability, one of the key drivers for this industry, utilities and renewables and everything like that, is innovation. We have to continue to innovate. If you look at the way that utilities and electricity was handled 100 years ago, it's vastly different now. So we have to continue to innovate the industry and look at new ways of doing so. The only way you're really going to innovate is if you have everyone's perspective, if you have everyone's opinion and viewpoint, and if you're in a conference room, you're having a meeting about, hey, what's the next challenge, or what's the problem that we're trying to solve. If you just get the voice of the loudest person in the room, you're getting very narrow perspective around how that's going to be done. And the way you create psychological safety in that scenario specifically is that, one, you encourage everyone in the room as like, hey, you're in this room for a reason. You have a voice, and I want your voice to be heard. So, I need you to participate in everything. And then also the biggest thing is that as everyone is participating, is that you empower them and show not just appreciation, but you encourage that share and that contribution. Because I think there's nothing worse than seeing somebody on your team who finally gets the courage to speak up and share their voice and their opinion, and then have it squashed because it wasn't valued, or it was quickly dismissed for one reason or another, whether it be because of bias or for another reason. So as a leader, we have to create an environment where everyone's voice not only is heard, but it's respected and it's given the due right in regards to considering, what it's going to contribute to.
And also when Nick was saying about creating the environment, it's also good to know your team, right? So if you have a topic that's very important where you really want everyone's input, just know their personality types. If it's the type of employee that needs to kind of chew on it for a while and let it marinate, and then they'll have their ideas, pass the information or the agenda ahead of time, so that by the time the meeting comes, they will have thought through, and then they're able to share their opinions during the meeting. And then also create that avenue. If they kind of need that general push, you don't want to embarrass anyone or put them on the spot. But if they've already shown that they have bright ideas, then just say, hey, so-and-so, what's your input? I'd like to know what you think. Just kind of give them the opportunity if they're not the type to just branch out and throw out the first ideas. So it's just a matter of knowing your team and knowing your environment and being able to create that for everyone to speak up and share their ideas.
Yeah, those are very important points. And I like that you shared some action items as well. They seem simple, but they can make a huge difference. As we kick off with the last question, I wanted to invite the viewers to please, if you have any questions, to drop them in the chat, because then we'll open up to Q&A. Now going into the last question, I'm going to break it up into two parts as well. I want to understand from your point of view, how can we improve workplace diversity, like by supporting our colleagues that are from different identities? So from April and Crystal, what would you like to see done more that you feel would make you feel more supported?
I would say to continue to have those conversations and network and team building. I know a lot of times people are kind of wary of what they don't know or what they don't understand. And just that unconscious bias, you kind of lean toward what's more familiar, or you get your ideas from, people that you've always gotten your ideas from. Just realize that there are other people that have value and have contributions to either conversations or what can answer or address some of the issues and challenges that the team may have or the company may have. I know one thing that my company has started is called Meaningful Conversations. And that's where like a VP or director level will reach out to an individual contributor and they will have a conversation on various topics. It was an entire series where it was race or gender or other types of discussions, and then just get that true feedback from the employee without having an assumptions. And it was a totally transparent conversation. There were no limits. You were, within respect, of course, but you were able to say your thoughts, share your thoughts, how you felt. And that kind of opened the door to some of the leaders, and they're able to make different decisions when they're going about their meetings or trying to create change. So I think that's valuable, and it doesn't have to be a VP to an individual contributor. You can do that with your team, your coworkers, your colleagues. Just kind of open the door to those discussions and get to know different personalities, diversity in thought, different generations. Just being able to connect with people, I think overall that would help.
Also to add to that, which I think were some great points, which is really and truly that having that open communication. But also I think a huge thing is for companies probably to start helping to break those stereotypes that people have against, certain minority groups, or, whether it's gender, age, just start find ways that we can, break that gap between what we have been taught and what is, actually reality, which is everyone has value, everyone has something to contribute. It doesn't matter their gender, their race, their age, we all have things to contribute. And therefore that should be, what should be at the forefront of our minds, that when we're speaking to someone, we try to make sure that we are listening to hear, the value in what they have to say, and not considering, what they look like or things like that, and be dismissive. So definitely, trying to break those stereotypes. And then also for women specifically, I think there needs to be, a level of respect. We all, most of us who are in the same departments as our colleagues, we have done the same degree. So the fact that I can finish the degree just like you, it already says, that I can, I am capable. So therefore, just have that respect towards women in the field, and, give them the opportunity to be able to share their ideas and, be able to have input in important decisions, and, not just be like, yeah, okay, it's a woman, women, so it's basically all around stereotypes. And I think once we could start breaking those stereotypes around minority groups and women, Black women, Latino women, just generally breaking stereotypes, I think we will strive really far in companies to be more inclusive and diverse.
Mm-hmm. And April had a really good point about earlier when she was talking about having to prove herself over and over again. Unfortunately, that's something that happens every promotion, every change of company, every change of job. So I think it's helpful, like she was saying, respect, at least respect the credential or the ability to be in the position in the first place, because having to prove yourself over and over again can be very discouraging, and then it affects that the psychological area that Nick was talking about. So just just respect that person and let them prove themselves based on the work that they do, not have to go above and beyond just to be seen as, the new person coming in. A lot of times when you come in, you're undervalued and underutilized, and that's the quickest way to lose a talented employee, is when you're not using them up to their potential. So that's just something else to add on.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, April. And Nick, well, we work together. I know that you're over a team that has a lot of diversity. So I wanted you to share a couple of actions that you implement with your team that our viewers could take back to their workplaces and help with any diversity effort. And just to give you a quick something that if you could touch on the work you've been doing around imposter syndrome that you brought up last time, that was very interesting.
Yeah, so that's great. And I think it's a couple ways. One is how you're growing the team, and then also the team that you're working to develop as well. So from a growing the team perspective, one of the buzzwords that we hear in the recruiting industry, years ago was, are they a cultural fit to the team? Do they fit in, and whatever that cultural word means, who knows, is very obscure, I think, on purpose for HR and TA to have leniency. But I pivoted, and I might have actually been Adam Grant to kind of put this in my head, but I can't remember now, is no longer looking for a cultural fit. I don't want somebody who fits in and thinks the same way as everyone else on the team, because then that just makes us really good at one thing. I started looking at it as I'm looking at new people who join my team, is I want someone who's a cultural add. I want someone who brings a different perspective, whether it be from a diverse background or they grew up in a different part of the world, or if they're male versus female, whatever it is. I think that's extremely important to have a dynamic team. And a specific example is I remember a team I managed a few years ago was a relatively younger team, and I was interviewing a candidate that was an older female, that I was at first hesitant about how she fit in culturally, but I challenged myself to look as what does she add? And from her perspective, she had tons of experience that I thought added an aspect of challenging others on her team that were kind of set in their ways and knew how to do it. And she brought in some outside experience, and she was one of the best hires we had on the team. So she was a great addition to the team, not just because it was a female or a senior, but just it was a different perspective at solving some of the same problems we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And again, going back to innovation, we're trying to solve some of the same problems in new ways. If you're adding to your team, whether it be internally or externally, you have to look at folks not just like, oh, well, they've got the same degree that I'm always looking for, or they have the same experience I'm always looking for. Is looking at what are some of the different perspectives and challenging yourself as a leader. When it comes to developing your own team, and Joy pointed out, is that kind of you find the introvert on your team. I think Crystal brought up a great example of kind of allowing the introverts to prepare for a session, rather than just pointing at them in the middle of the meeting and say, hey, what are your thoughts? I think you'll see somebody clam up pretty quick if you do that. But giving them, I like that because I haven't done that before, but kind of saying, hey, here's the topics we're going to discuss. I'd love for you to come up with a couple ideas that you bring to the table. You brought some good ones in the past. Those are some easy examples. But to the point of imposter syndrome is that I think you're challenging folks who might be undervaluing what they contribute to the team. And even pulling a couple people aside and after a meeting, hey, I didn't hear you, present ideas. Oh, I didn't have anything there. Okay, well, let's try to think of some new ways. But again, it comes down to, you can't just manage the whole team the same way and expect to see the results. You've got to really take that time to get to know your team, get to know, it's kind of like if I've got that type A personality who's gonna be the first one to answer my question, I'm going to ask them to sit down and shush for a little bit. I need you to practice listening. Same thing for that introvert who's in the corner. I mean, let's be honest, an engineer is typically an introvert, is one of the smartest people in the room. I need them to speak up as much as possible. I need their insight and their advice, because I'm going to have my type A salesperson, and I say that as one, is going to be the loudest one in the room. And I'm like, I don't need your opinion as much as I need everyone else in the room. I want everyone's, of course, but you just have to have that intentionality around, what are we trying to accomplish, as a team, and empower those on your team to say, just because you feel like you may not necessarily have all the qualifications, doesn't mean you're an imposter. It means that you're working towards there and kind of empower them to say, your voice is heard, and it's respected, and it's not just that it's needed in order for us to succeed as a team.
Thank you, Nick. Well, I'm going to open it up now to Q&A. Already got our first question of the day. It's not been directed to anyone directly, so if it speaks to you, please speak up. This one is from Caroline, and she says, I work in a project finance, and often my work is reviewed by senior leadership very critically. Do you have any advice on how to fortify yourself to not feel emotionally vulnerable when your work is being dissected by mostly male, more senior people? I think April or Crystal, you guys will be very qualified to answer this one.
I would say, well, I'm sure April has some input as well, but I'll just start off by saying, try your best to stick to the facts, because when you stick to the facts, it's harder to scrutinize. And I believe she did say that earlier. When someone is asking questions, maybe you can show some of your the data that you use to come to the conclusion that you made, or whatever data for, if you're using a chart or a graph, say this is where it came from. And when you stick to the facts, it'll kind of give you a firmer foundation. A lot of times in the workplace, you're not going to always have friends. Everybody's not going to like you, but if you stick to the facts, then they have to respect your work at least. So if they respect you and your work, that'll be enough to carry you through. So there's always going to be some people that are, kind of give you the side eye or question your abilities. But as long as you stick with the facts, you should be okay.
I completely agree with that. I would say as long as you are thorough in what you're doing, it leaves very, very little room for much criticism. So I always try to make sure that I'm very thorough when I'm doing a report or, anything on the whole that has to, especially go up to management. I ensure that I am very, very thorough. And then if they do have questions, ensure that you have that information readily available. So it doesn't look like, you're now searching or you're unsure, just have that information, in a special folder so that when they do come with these questions, you're able to say, okay, well, I got it from here, 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 here. And, that helps build credit to, you and your work and, your work ethic. So what I can say in life, not everybody is going to like you. Not everybody is going to, gel well with you. But what you can definitely have control over is the work that you produce. So just make sure that the work that you are producing is your best and you're always thorough.
And you also can only control the way you respond to it. So don't let it discourage you. Look at it as them helping you develop further. Because if you know that they're going to ask some random questions, try to anticipate that ahead of time so that when they do come back with these questions, you'll already have quick answers. If not, just defer to the data, but you'll be able to start responding. And it's almost like they're testing you or quizzing you, and you'll be better at responding on the spot. So look at it as a tool to help you.
And one more thing with that is I just want to say that when you are receiving, that criticism, please have an open mind. Don't take anything personal. This is your job. And they are only, sometimes persons may say something a particular way, but we tend to feel a type of way because we already may have had some past, experience that may have caused us to trigger, that we are being talked to in a particular way or, things like that. We need to eliminate that and just look at what they are saying, the facts from what they are saying. Try to take out the value out of what they are saying and just apply that. The rest, toss it away.
Mm-hmm.
Those advices were fantastic. You can tell that you guys have been through that a couple of times and now can master that situation. We have a question now from Sarah. Do you have advice for how to find a mentor outside of your company? I just started in the renewables industry recently post-graduation, and I'm the only female in the engineering department. It's also a fairly small company. I think April can relate.
I'll take a shot at that one.
Yeah, go for it, Nick.
So it's a great question because it's one that is, it's hard to find a mentor. It's like not like there's a, it sounds like we've got a great opportunity in the mentorship through Women in Clean Tech. So definitely check out that link. But I'll say from my personal experience, it came from networking, and that's a scary word, is getting out there and putting yourself out there. And I can actually understand where you're coming from, because when I first got involved in a Women in Tech group, I was the only male in the room. And so I just thought about every stereotype that went towards, a male dominant, type A personality. And I was like, I got to do the complete opposite. So if you're the only female in that group of engineers, kind of think about the opposite of what you would do, and kind of not what you would do, but the opposite of what's expected in that situation. So looking at that opportunity to network, I got two of my mentors for just meeting at networking events. One was at Women in Tech, where I just started picking her brain about how I could contribute and make an impact to this topic. And others was just simply getting out there and looking at, what am I trying to accomplish from my mentorship? If it's leadership, if it's, something within career advancement, if it's industry, putting yourself out there a little bit, and seeing what comes back to you, I think you could see a return on.
I would say really take advantage of your professional organizations and special interest groups. And also know that your mentor doesn't always have to look like you, even though you may feel the most comfortable. I know for me, there's no one in engineering above my position that looks like me. So, but there are also good mentors and sponsors and allies and champions that don't look like you. I've had some white males, some white females, just different cultures and backgrounds that have been really good mentors. So there's, like I was saying, there's always value with someone, and there's always some type of contribution that can be given or received. So take advantage of your professional groups where you may find someone or have better chances of finding someone that looks like you, but also within the company or adjacent companies that just may have a great mentor just overall. Just be open to the experience and advice that can be given to you to help you develop.
Yeah, and also, although you are, in a male-dominated environment, which I am in, my mentor is a male on my team. So there's always someone in the team who is willing to help. You just need to read the room a little to see who that person is, and then try to strike a conversation with them. So don't feel like, you need to go somewhere outside. I know, it's all about a trust thing, but I can always see there is someone who is willing to help. You just kind of have to have your eyes open to see who's that person who's always sharing information, who's always, sharing resources, sharing advice. And then you could probably have a conversation with them one-on-one, just generally stating, starting the conversation very general, just to feel them out. And then you can move from there. And be able to build a relationship with them. But there is always someone inside also.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to also say, Sarah, please reach out to us, connect with us on LinkedIn as well, so that we can be a resource for you. One thing that I've learned throughout my career is that people generally really want to help. So sometimes it's all about just getting that bravery to ask for it. We have another question here from another Caroline. What's a professional way to say, I already said that fosters a long-term understanding of, please proactively give me credit for my ideas?
April?
Wow, that's an interesting one. I think we need to probably not take that approach. You could probably just say, as I just mentioned, just to be polite. Yes, you may have to say things. And I know sometimes, as a woman, I have to repeat, say myself, because sometimes the first time they don't pay attention to you, then you say it again. And it's almost like, okay, yeah. And then, you have to repeat yourself sometimes. So I think the best you can do in that situation, you could just say, as I previously mentioned, so is the case, and just let them know. But there's no real professional way to really go about someone who keeps asking you the same question over and over. I know it can be very, very annoying and upsetting, but you just have to keep your composure and just say, let them know this is what I'm saying and this is my viewpoint and I stand by it.
So I think when it comes for like different ideas, because you mentioned something about getting credit. So I think it's you said the idea and then maybe somebody else said it. That's when it's good to have an ally in the room. And your ally doesn't always have to be a manager or director. It can be your coworker, your peer. So it's good to have that ally to say, oh yeah, April just said such and such, or, to add on to April's idea or what Nick just said, to kind of put that segue in there. Or you can circle back and add on to what you said previously, so that when you make the comment that April suggested, as I stated earlier, X, Y, and Z, we could also do this, this, and this. So then it looks like you're adding on to what you've already said, but you're not necessarily repeating yourself, but it is kind of that reminder that you did say it. And as far as credit, sometimes you're not going to get the credit. But if the idea is for the greater good of the team or the company, then it may circle back to you. It may not. Sometimes you just have to take one for the team and just maybe you'll be heard next time.
I always like to go with per my previous email. I think that's the best way to get the attention. Is just to reiterate. But in all seriousness, I think it's, if you're talking about credit, that's a challenging one where I think you've got to have probably a kind of side conversation with leadership. When I say that from my perspective, I would want somebody on my team to say, hey, I mentioned that, but you didn't hear me until, such and such said it again. And, I'd want to know that. Not all leaders are kind of open to that. And I think that's something you've got to identify with your management. But I would definitely want to know that if I was in that room. If it's a matter of just having it heard and comprehended, it's just sometimes looking at like presenting it in a different way. So, maybe they didn't hear it the first time because it wasn't the exact solution they were thinking of, or it wasn't, the phrasing was off. So just rewording it and just reiterating the same point. I know it seems like a lot of work. As a parent of 3 boys, I sometimes have to repeat ourselves. And if you're talking to a room that's not really listening to what you're saying, it's kind of like talking to kids. So it's like, no, you can't play with the Nintendo. No, you can't play with Nintendo. Let me try and say this differently. Why don't you guys go play outside? So it's the same solution, just presented in a different way. And it gives an opportunity to kind of have that voice heard. And by the way, it still doesn't work, but it's just it's a creative way of doing it.
Perfect.
And then one more thing I want to just add to that is, sometimes we don't really consider our approach to things. And we may think we are bringing things over clearly or, in a way that people could understand. And sometimes we aren't. I'm just saying in those situations, I think it's also good. Let's say you are speaking to someone and they keep asking you to repeat. You can probably ask them, can you, let me know which specific point are you not understanding so that I can elaborate on that one, just to see where exactly the gap is for them so that now you can address that rather than just repeating yourself and saying the same thing over and over.
We have 2 more questions. This one is from Aaron. How to break out of bad habits from a toxic work culture? It can be a real challenge and lead to lack of trust, not offering opinions, being more cautious, etc. I can relate to that. Does anybody have a story of, healing from a toxic work environment?
I wasn't part of a toxic work environment, but I kind of walked into one in the past. And so I would say I would recommend to utilize your leaders, because a lot of times your leader doesn't know what's going on. Because, even the troublemakers know how to put on a good face when the manager or the director walks in the room, and it turns into, I love my job, everything's great, but then there's so much toxicity going on. So just have that, be brave, or have the confidence to utilize your leaders, because they may be able to find a way to resolve that. I know some companies have ethics lines or even zero retaliation policies. So if you're able to talk to your leader and let them know what's going on, they may be able to come up with ways to help neutralize that without you having to deal with it on your own.
I agree with that. I have been in that situation and in that toxic environment. And I agree going to your, manager. And also if you go to your manager and they are not addressing it, I agree with taking it a step further. I had to do that because at some point I felt my manager was not listening to me. He was not respecting my views. Sometimes that does happen. And sometimes they are the ones who, sometimes push that toxic environment because they want to keep us within control. So my thing is sometimes they, people above them aren't really aware because they aren't directly attached to the department. They are like overseeing a lot of different departments. So if it does reach to a point that you feel like you're not being heard from your manager, I would agree to speak with someone else that you think, you can, have some trust in. So let them know about the situation and then for them to help direct you maybe to someone that they may know that you can talk to who can help you in that situation.
Yeah, toxic work environments can sometimes lead to a lot of PTSD, and it takes a lot of time for you to heal physically, mentally, emotionally from that experience. So one thing I've learned from my experience is as soon as you find yourself in that kind of environment, run, because you won't really take a lot of good from it. You'll just have to unlearn everything that you've learned. So yeah. Caroline, this is the last question, unless somebody wants to throw something in really quick in the chat. What if you're not afforded time to always have data to back you up what you know, if what you know is true because of experience? I used to take this approach and was constantly burnt out to have evidence always ready. Does that make sense? Or should
I think what she's asking maybe is when they're constantly asking things of you in a short space of time and, you're not able to gather as much information. In that case, I would definitely communicate with my manager and let him know, okay, I have these tasks right now in my queue. Can you tell me which one is a priority and can we adjust the, the deadline dates for the other ones if possible, because I'm not able to achieve or get the information that is needed for all of this right now because I have to do, background research. That is where communication comes in. If you are feeling stressed or there's too much being put on you, you have to, go to your manager and let them know and then ask them to come up with a plan with you on how they want to go about it, prioritizing which ones, are most important, which ones we can probably do. Because sometimes not all of them are, needed right away. But because of our work ethic where we try to get everything done now to make sure that, we have it done and as quickly as possible, we tend to put added pressure onto ourselves. So I would say if you're feeling overwhelmed with the task that you are given, have a discussion with your manager and try to prioritize them so that you don't feel, swamped, and then you can get the information, gather the proper information in time for each one.
So I would say if you are in a meeting, if your question is saying you're in a meeting and you don't have the data with you or the time to gather it, it's okay to say, I'll get back with you, or I don't know the answer at this time. It's always good to properly communicate the way April was saying, because you don't want to make it up, because then your credibility could be questioned even more if you say the wrong thing. A lot of times when people ask you questions, they already know the answer to it. They're just trying to see if you know. So if there is more respect in saying, I'll get back with you, or I don't know at the moment, or I'll have to grab the data and let them know when you'll get back with them, and then truly circle back with them when you say you will. And then that'll kind of help, with your credibility and doing what you say you're going to do. We're not always expected to know all of the answers, but if we know where to get them and then address it, then that'll look a lot better.
And April, you mentioned it earlier, asking questions if it's unclear what you're trying to get across, asking, if they're like, well, we need more data, ask more clarifying questions. Like, okay, what specifically are you looking for? Where is this information that I presented to you falling short? What are the gaps? Like, just get really good details so that way when you go back to put in more work to it, you're not doing that for no reason and you've got a clear objective. But then the other piece of it is you do have to kind of remove your emotion from it. I think it's really easy for us, and April, you mentioned this, it's easy for us to have an idea and say, this is the best idea ever because we created it and we love it and we think it solves. But if you unwrap that idea, it may not necessarily solve all the problems. So you've got to be open to some criticism, and open to kind of some poking and prodding as far as coming with new ways. That doesn't mean it's coming from a place of bias. It could be just be coming from a place of, hey, I need to know more about it. So I would take the approach is, obviously if you go in that situation, somebody could be bringing bias to it, or they could just be coming from a productive, criticism. If they're coming with bias, you can't do anything about that. You can't control that. So take that out of consideration. You can only control yourself in that scenario. So if you kind of take the feedback and the criticism, you ask for very detailed, specific things that you need to come back with them before presenting or kind of following up more information, I think that can make a big impact to show your professionalism, your willingness to put in the work, and also how great of an idea it can really be if you're willing to hear some criticism and then come back with just even more data to back you up.
Well, thank you guys so much for everything. We're unfortunately out of time, so we aren't going to be able to go to all the questions, but I'd like to hand it back over to Caroline.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, and thanks, panelists. I love that there was another Caroline on this call also. Not heard my name so much in a while, and there was sort of great questions as well. Thank you for addressing my own question. I feel like I've learned a lot about how to, continue to stay in a quantitative field. So I think that's what's really important, is that women don't leave the field, that we stay and grow up the pipeline. So I appreciate all of your advice. So if you all liked this event, we have more. We have lots of materials at Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, including a mentorship program if people are looking for mentors. I would love to speak to anyone who has any curiosity about building a network through us. And I know Elizabeth and Nick and Michelle have a great perspective of how to do the same on breaking the glass. So hopefully these two organizations can kind of help everyone stay in the industry and grow and be supported. Elizabeth, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, just, thank you again. Thank you to the team at Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability for teaming up with us to have this conversation. It's always so great every single time we have it. Thank you to our speakers for coming together and going through, just all the lead up to the events and the brainstorming. Attendees, thank you as well. You're taking valuable time out of your day to further your career development as well. We did drop links to our upcoming programming as well. We'd love to see you there. You can be a member of Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability and come be a glass breaker as well. We'd love to have you too. But aside from that, if our speakers just wanted to say one last goodbye to the audience, we'll take it from there.
I'll just say thank you for having us. I enjoyed being here. If anyone has questions or want to reach out, my LinkedIn link is in the chat. I'll be happy to answer any questions or help anyone think things through. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I also want to say thank you for creating this event. I think these things have a lot of value to it. Providing people with solutions of how to work through in their job, and just to maneuver in that workspace, because it can get complex at times. So just having these resources is really, really great. And, it's something that can really, help people with personal, development, as well as, work-life advancements. So I just want to thank you all so much for having, this event and inviting me. And again, just as Crystal, if you all have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me via my LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you all.
Yeah, nothing much to add. I'll give all the credit to Crystal and April for some great material, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to join the event today.
I want to thank all the panelists for taking the time and sharing their experiences and tips on how to overcome the bad with the good, and also put myself at the disposal. Reach out via LinkedIn. I'm happy to continue the conversation as well.
Well, have an awesome day, everyone. Enjoy the 4th of July weekend and
Yeah.
come again.